Hey, everybody. For week one, I wanted to jump in and provide you with a little bit of an overview of Tableau here. So hopefully you've been able to go ahead and get that installed without any issue. If you've ran into trouble, please let me know. Your screen, if this is the first time you've used Tableau, it likely looks a little bit different from mine because as you can see, like a lot of other applications, it's showing some of my most recent workbooks. So along the left-hand side, you'll see our connection agent. So this is basically asking us where is our data and how do we want to connect to it. So Tableau supports us connecting to obviously Excel files, which we'll do a lot of. I can connect to text, PDF files, all sorts of other file types. But the other thing I really like about this is it also enables me to connect directly to servers. So I can hook directly up to data centers with this. So it has connectors for all of my various SQL databases, my Oracle databases, and tons of them. In fact, I've yet to find one that you cannot connect to. In fact, oftentimes the hardest struggle is getting the right port opened up and credentialing and all of that. We don't get into that at that level in this class, but if you're working on a work project and you need some help, I do a lot of this. So don't ever hesitate to just drop me a line. I'd be happy to help. So, but again, the connection process is pretty straightforward, regardless of what we're doing. So for the majority of our time in this class, we'll A, be using Excel, or excuse me, be using Tableau, and B, be connecting to Excel data. And I do that just because it's a little cleaner and easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Microsoft Excel, and this is the data set drop dose. It's actually out there in Canvas in week one, so feel free to grab that. And I'm going to say open. It's now going to import that data in. This is a fairly small data set, so it's going to load pretty quickly. And then we can see down here, it has loaded the data for me. It's given me a little bit of information. Right here, it's telling me what are my field names. Okay, so think of these as basically your column headers in Excel. All right, so I've got a field for nurse, drop doses, city, and state. All right. Next, it tells me what sheet it resides in. Okay. And if there's any remote fields, that doesn't really apply here. So you can see it's just duplicated. Then if I look over here, what this has given me is it's showing me part of my data. Okay. And I apologize if the sound is a little rough. It seems to be storming all of a sudden. Um, so here we can see that the field for nurse, it's got some of the sample data below. And then Tableau has also said, hey, I've got an ABC in here because I think this is alpha data. And usually Tableau does a pretty good job of getting this right. If they don't, you can just simply click this down arrow. And here you can start to change and manipulate some of this. Okay. And we'll get into that way later. All right. Here it's showing the number of drop doses and it's giving me the hashtag, the pound sign, whatever you want to call it, basically saying it's numerical data. These last two fields right here are showing globes. And the reason being is, as you can see, these are cities and states. This is what Tableau considers geospatial data. So this can be anything like city, state, zip code, area code, country, region, continent, latitude and longitude. So all of those things can be used for Tableau to actually dial down location. And quite frankly, location and geospatial mapping is one of my favorite things and the most impressive thing that Tableau does. We'll spend an entire week on that as the semester goes on. But I want to first give you just a high level overview as it's kind of hard for you to visualize data if you don't know what the data is and why it's here. So in this class, most of our examples are going to be examples that are hopefully easy for everyone to understand. And what I mean by that is just simply the industry that it's in. If we get overly complicated with something and you're trying to understand deep terminology of a certain industry that you're not familiar with, I found that really hinders the learning. So I try and pick examples that are kind of common nomenclature that most people can understand. So as I told you in my intro video, a lot of my experience is in healthcare, so I will occasionally show some healthcare examples, and this is one of them. So this is a project I worked on many, many years ago where we were trying to find a digital way to capture if and when a nurse dropped a dose of medication when they were administering it to a patient. So in English, basically, when the nurse is handing the patient a pill, if it hits the ground, what do we do? Spoiler alert, in healthcare, we don't have the 5-second rule. So if you drop somebody's Tylenol on the ground, you're not going to pick it up. It's considered no good. Prior to my team developing a technology solution for this, how this was tracked was if the nurse dropped a dose, they were expected to leave the bedside, go into the nurse's station, grab a clipboard, and write down what the dose was, when they dropped it, and sign off on it. There was very little checks and balances. So as you can imagine, there was very little of this reported. And inventories weren't lining up with actual counts. So we had a lot of issues. And as you might speculate, some of the most commonly dropped drugs were not over-the-counter things like Tylenol or nasal decongestant. We're talking a little bit heavy hitters here. Okay. So more on that in a minute. But my data looks good. I like what I see here. So now is what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to where it says sheet one, and I'm going to click sheet one. So now we can see my fields got pulled in, and Tableau has added some extras as well. And you can see latitude and longitude say they are generated. So that just basically means Tableau has an underlying API that says, hey, if you gave me a city and a state that I recognize, I can generate for you the latitude and longitude coordinates of that. Again, we'll get more into mapping in future lessons, but my purpose for this video is to give you just a high-level overview of how to get comfortable with Tableau. And the nice thing about Tableau, I compare it a lot to Excel in that I can spend a couple hours with someone and teach them how to use the very, very basics of Excel. But I could spend a decade teaching someone and they still wouldn't know everything about Excel. And I put myself in that category as well. I cannot do everything that Excel is capable of, nor can I do every single thing Tableau is capable of. It's a very, very powerful tool. However, to get started, it's not challenging at all. So what I want to do is I want to start by coming up here in the upper right-hand corner and clicking the Show Me button. And what this does is this shows me a whole bunch of common chart types that Tableau can create for us pretty easily. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this. So I will preface this by saying I use a Mac for my examples. And this software works on Mac or PC. So if you're looking at my screen going, this doesn't quite look the same, there's just some subtle differences. But if you ever need any help, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select nurse. And then I'm going to come down here to where it says dropped doses. And I'm going to do a control click so I can select both of these fields. And if we look over here to the right, we will see that some of my options started to illuminate. And the one that Tableau thinks makes the most sense, they're going to put this a little kind of burnt orange banner around it. And as you can see, it says it's a horizontal bar chart. Okay. So all I have to do is give this a single click. And now what happens? It has generated a chart for me. So if you've been counting my clicks, I made 3 clicks and I've created a chart. So as I said, pretty easy to get started. I've been using this tool for over a decade now. And like I said, I would not consider myself the all-knowing ninja of Tableau. So here's my chart. And I'm going to go ahead and come up here and click again on the Show Me menu to toggle it away. And you can see I've got a pretty basic chart here. And you don't have to be a data scientist or an expert data analyst to look at this and go, wow, we have this. And it's no accident that it's my name up there. The first time I taught this unit, it was I used a different name and it happened to align with a student that was in a in-person lecture and they took offense to that. It was not a targeted attack. So now it's my name. So if your name's Dave, I'm talking about myself, not about you. Okay. So what we consider an outlier. Now, if I look at this chart, there's a lot of things about this that I would like to improve. Okay. So think about that for a minute. If you need to, pause the video and think about Are there things that jump out about this chart that we need to change to make it more visually appealing? So for me, if I look at this, a couple of things that jump out at me right away is how this chart is sorted. All right. So by default, Tableau has sorted alphabetically based off the nurse's first name. All right. That's not really ideal, and it doesn't tell a very good story. If my whole goal is to cut down the number of drop doses, what do I want to see? I want to see the people at the top that have the most number of drop doses. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to sort this descending. Okay. To do this, it's pretty easy. I just come down here to my header. Okay. So my label for my x-axis. And you see if I mouse over it, I get this little icon. If I click it once, it now sorts based on drop doses descending. I click it again, it sorts ascending. If I click it yet again, it removes the sort. Okay. So I'll click it one more time so I get this sort in here. Okay. So now I didn't have to sort with having an outlier this big, but it makes it real easy to see who my first, second, and third offenders are, right? Okay. So that works pretty well. Now, if I continue to study this, what else would I want to enhance? Well, if I mouse over, it will tell me how many drop doses there were. So Dave had 250, Tommy had 20. But as I start to get down here, without mousing over, you can't tell me with 100% precision how much Bob had. Okay, I have to mouse over that. So that's not very granular, and data science is all about getting into the details. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I want to put a label on each one of these bars. Okay, and the label I want is the number of drop doses. So to do that, I'm simply going to take drop doses and I'm going to bring it over here. This is what we call our marks card, as you can see here. And this is the nomenclature that the textbook uses. So I'll refer to it as that as well. And I've got this option here that says label. So what I want to do is just click and drag drop doses over to label. And there you go. I've got my labels. Okay. So now I'm telling a little bit better story. Okay. That has improved. Okay. Now I want to continue to enhance this chart. So it says sheet one. That's not very telling. Okay. So I'm going to double click this and it gives me the option to change my sheet name. So I'm going to say dropped doses. And this is what we call a horizontal bar chart. So I'm just going to call it horizontal bar. I'm going to select that text. I like it centered. Let's make it bold. And let's say apply. Okay. So that's better. Now, the next thing I want to do is we're going to really focus on a lot of these details in this class. So you'll notice in one of your texts, there's a lot of conversation around color. Okay. And I'll talk to you a lot about the meaning of color. So this one right here, I'm talking about something that's negative, right? So something negative like dropped doses, okay, it's in blue. Blue does not typically have a negative connotation, does it? So what I want to do is I want to change my color palette. All right. And to do that, I'm going to do it kind of similar to how I put my label on the number. So you see, I've got this option here for color, and I want to trigger color based off of the number of drop doses. So I will click and drag and I'll bring this to color. Okay. So it did change my color gradient. So now I go from a dark blue all the way down to this light blue. I've got a couple other problems I want to solve here first. Number one, I've got such a difference between my number one offender and my number two that this has really skewed my chart. Okay. So I've got one of two issues here. Either Dave has a major problem with drug abuse and he's been stealing a lot of drugs out of the drug cabinet, or I've got a major problem with data integrity. Now, either way, I need to take some action. If it's data integrity, I need to clean up my data. That will fix the chart. If Dave is got a drug problem, I need to do something with Dave. Okay. So regardless of such, I want to exclude Dave from my data. I want to get that outlier out of here. Okay. So this makes it really easy. So I'm going to come up, I'm simply going to single click on Dave. And you can see I've got this option here to exclude. So I'm going to exclude Dave and look what happens. My chart completely redesigns itself. Okay. Now, I get a question on this all the time, and it's a fair question. It's important to note that it didn't go away. He's still in the underlying data set. He's just filtered out. And you can see that right here where it says filters. Don't get too concerned about that this week. We're going to talk about filters in the coming weeks, and I'll show you how to use them in a more robust way. But my point is, I got Dave out of my data set. I've got a better dispersion of data, which I like, but I'm still dealing with this blue issue, which I don't like. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to single click on color and I'm going to say edit colors. And I've got a whole bunch of options here under palette. Okay. And I'm not very creative when it comes to figuring out what colors go well with each other. And if you're like me, Tableau has got your back. So what I want to do is I want to come down here and I want to find something that works a little bit better. So I kind of like the red green diverging, where I kind of think of it as like stop and go, right? So red meaning, hey, stop, we've got a problem. Green meaning, hey, we're okay, proceed. All right. So I don't have to do a lot of specifics here. I just simply click on it. It shows me what the color palette would look like. All right. And I simply say apply. I like this because I can stay in my color palette menu without having to exit out and go ahead and see the reflection of what's going to happen. And as you can see, it did give me some good color depth here, but it's backwards, isn't it? I would prefer that my lower numbers be green and my higher numbers be red, right? So this is pretty easy. You probably already figured this out. I just simply click reversed. I'm going to say apply, and then I'm going to say okay. All right. So now, in just a handful of clicks, I've done some things to really clean this chart up a little bit. Okay. All right. So visualization is all about iteration. All right. So I want to iterate this a few times and I want to create a few different types of charts so you can see how I can take the same data but display it differently with a different type of chart. So what I'm going to do is I want to rename sheet one. So I want to go up here. I'm going to say rename, and I'm just going to say horizontal bar. Okay. So that's done. And now I want to create another chart, and I could simply click this button next to it that if I mouse over, it's going to say new worksheet, and I could start from scratch and reinvent the wheel. There's times I need to do that. I'm lazy, so I prefer to not do that. So pretty straightforward. I'm going to come here to horizontal bar. I'm going to right click and I'm simply going to select duplicate. So you can see it now created a second tab that says horizontal bar, parentheses and two. This looks just like what happens if I was to do the same thing in Excel with a copy of a sheet. Okay. So I'll deal with renaming this in a minute. But what I want to do now is I want to take the same data. There's a lot of things I like here. I like my title, with the exception of I'm going to delete horizontal bar and we're going to make a vertical bar chart. So we say, okay, so now my title is more reflective. Okay. I like my colors. I like my labels. I don't want to mess with any of that. But what I want to do is I want to basically swap my axes. Okay. Instead of having drop doses on the X axis, I want drop doses on the Y axis and I want to bring nurse down to the X axis. Okay. So again, I could start over from scratch and do this. But like I said, I always like the easy way. And for me, the easy way is just simply coming up here to this icon that says swap rows and columns. Okay. I click that and look what happens. Boom. I've now created a vertical bar chart with basically one click. All right. So I want to do a couple of things. I want to come down here and I want to right click and rename this so it's more intuitive. And you're going to see why momentarily. So I'm going to name this vertical bar. I'm going to get rid of that two in parentheses, and I'm going to save it. Okay. So we're looking good so far. All right. So now I want to do another version of a chart that is a little bit different. So for this one, I am going to start from scratch. So I'm going to come here I'm going to select the same things, nurse, and I'm going to control click drop doses. I'm going to come up here to the show me menu, and I'm going to come to the one right below it. And this is a chart you may or may not have seen before. If you've seen it, you may not have created one before. I'm guessing with horizontal and vertical bar charts, you've probably done that in Excel or some other type of tool. But this next chart is called a tree map. And you may not have created one of these before. Tableau is not the only tool that will create tree maps. It is definitely one of the easier ones to create a tree map in. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to click show me again so this goes away. Okay. And here's my chart. And what this does is this is kind of a modern take on the pie chart. Okay. I am not a fan of pie charts, and I'll talk about that in pretty good detail as we move through the course. But pie charts aren't real friendly when I have a lot of slices of data like I do now. Okay. So to emulate what I have in my other two charts, the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of Dave again. So I can right click on this and I can come down and say exclude. Dave goes away, everything resizes. Typically, what appears in the upper left-hand corner is the highest number of quantity. In this case, our quantity is dropped doses. So again, I'm missing my labels. So I'm going to take drop dose and I'm going to drag it over to label. Okay. I want to make a change here because what I don't like is two things. Number one, the label is appearing in the upper left-hand corner and the text is rather small. This is easy to fix. I'm going to click label and I'm going to come down here to where it says text and I've got the 3 ellipsis points. I'm going to click that and I want to be sure everything looks good here. And I'm good here. I'm going to say okay. And now I want to come down to my font. I want to increase the font size of my label just a little bit. So I'm going to bring this up to 12 point. We can see that got bigger, which I like. Okay. And under alignment, I want to do a couple of things. I want to center it horizontally. So I'll do that right there. And I also want to center vertically. And I'll do that right there. Okay, so I like this, but it's a little misleading that it says the quantity and then the name. So I'm going to come back to this, and all I need to do is I just simply am going to grab this and remove it and put it down below. Say apply. You can also have the preview button that will show you what it will look like. Okay, so I'm going to say okay. We click out of that, and what do I have now? I've got the label, and we can now see the number of drop doses. Okay, my color, I'm still not happy with. Okay, so you can see right here that I do have color in here. The show me function did that on its own, which I don't like. So I'm going to get rid of it. And to do that, I simply mouse over, click the down arrow, come down to remove. Okay. So now to add it the way I want it, I'm going to say drop doses. I'm going to go color. It does it again. I did that just so you could see how to remove it. I'm going to click on color, edit colors. I'm going to go to my palette. And again, I'm going to go to my red, green diverging. Again, I need to do reversed on the color, say apply, and okay. All right, now as you're watching me do this, if you're on a smaller screen and you're following along, you might see that some of your rectangles aren't labeled. That's okay. Tableau is doing that because it doesn't have enough room to display them, okay? So I'm going to come up here to my sheet label, and again, I'm going to say dropped doses, and we call this a tree map. Again, I like this centered and bold. Apply. Okay. I'm going to come down here to where it says sheet 2. I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to say tree map. All right. So I now have 3 different charts, my horizontal bar, my vertical bar, and my tree map. I want to make one more for you. So I'm again going to click to create a new sheet. And now I'm going to click nurse. I'm going to do state, city, and number of drop doses. I'm gonna come over here to show me. And now you can see my maps have lit up. So this one is called a symbol map. I'm going to go ahead and click it. Okay, there we go. Now, what you see here, and we're going to get into this in later weeks, I'm just going to show you how to fix it for now. But what this has done is this has created basically its own map image for each person in my data set. This is sloppy, it's hard to see, and I don't like it. So to get rid of it, I just simply need to remove nurse. And to do that, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to click the down arrow and I'm going to say remove. Now, if it didn't make sense what I did, don't worry about that. We're going to get into that in the coming weeks. I just wanted to show you how to create a quick and easy map because this is a pretty cool feature. So what you see here are plot points for the individuals in my data set. Okay. And as you can see, this here is Dave once again. Okay. But he's not showing up in my tooltip here. So I need to take nurse's name and I need to drag it to the label. And there we go. So I'm going to handle this the same way. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say exclude. Okay. So that adjusts my map. And the other thing I can do is if I want the number of drop doses to display, I can drop that onto the label as well. Okay. So I'm just going to name this map. And I'll come down here and do the same in my sheet. Okay, so I now created 4 charts. They show the same data. Okay, let's add a little color to this real quick. So I'm going to do drop dose, drop it onto color, click color. I'm going to do this the same way. I'm going to go red, green, diverging, reverse it, applied, and there we go. All right, so I got 4 charts. Again, 4 charts that all show the same data. So if I come down here to the right, I've got a button that says New Dashboard. This is my dashboard tool. So I'm going to click this, and this creates a new dashboard. Okay. And as you can see, here are the 4 charts that we created. All right. So every dashboard needs a title. So I'm going to go up to the dashboard menu, and I'm going to come down to Show Title. I'm going to double click this guy, and I'm going to say Dropped Doses Mockup. Okay. Again, I like to center and bold. Apply. There we go. So what I want to do now is I just want to click and drag each one of these into my dashboard, just like this. Okay. So there we go. And I want to make a few adjustments here. Okay. The first thing you can see is in the upper right-hand corner, what's happened. I've got some legends that have been brought in. Legends are great if you need them. However, what I will argue with you most of the semester is if I have good chart labeling, I don't need a legend. Okay. And as you can see, this legend takes up a whole lot of space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this X to remove from dashboard. It's asking me, do I want to delete it all? I say yes, and look what happens. I get back more space. Okay. So I can see right here, I forgot to center this. So I'm simply going to do that. So I got a good uniform look. Okay. Now, in data visualization world, I'm not going to make a dashboard that has 4 charts that show the same thing with just different chart types. Why do I do this? This is how I want to show this to my stakeholder, okay? My boss, my client, whoever I'm doing this work for, okay? So I want to show them this data in 4 different ways, and I want to say, what do you like the best, okay? And they might say something like, you know, I really like the horizontal bar chart, but I don't like the color. And I like the map, but can you zoom in more? Okay, that's great. That's why it's an iterative process, all right? So we're going to have this conversation with whoever's asked us to do it, our boss, whoever's writing the check, okay? And that's how we're going to start to decide what our next iteration looks like, okay? So that is Tableau in a high-level overview. We're going to get way deeper on this as the semester goes on. But this should be enough to get you started. The last thing I want to do is show you how you're going to save this to submit it to me, okay? And this is very important. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to say File, save as. All right. I want to save it to my respective location. So I just might dump this to my desktop and I might say, always label it with your name, please. So I'm going to Lingerfelt homework one. And guys, this is really important. Come down here and select the TWBX. Okay, that is not the default. And the reason why I have you do that is when you submit it this way, it will give me your Tableau and it will also give me an export of whatever data set you used. So most of the time, with the exception of one assignment, I let you use your own data. And I do that on purpose because that gives you a chance to get familiar with what you're working with. If you're trying to understand a data set that I give you and learn how to use Tableau, it's a lot. So that's why I do this. So that's the first thing you need to give me is this file. So we're going to say save. The other thing you need to give me is what we call an exported image of your dashboard. And I'm going to show you how to do it, and then I'm going to explain why. Okay. So I'm going to say dashboard, and I'm going to come down to export image. And this is going to export a PNG file. Okay. So I'm going to name this Lingerfelt Homework One Dashboard Export. All right. And this is just going to dump a PNG file of this to my desktop. Now, the reason I have you do that, because you're probably going, well, we give you the file. Why do you need an exported image? Here's why. If you followed me step by step, most likely what you're seeing on your screen right now looks different, a little bit different from mine. And the reason is Tableau auto adjusts for screen resolution. Okay. I do this for a living. So in my area, when I work on this, I'm doing this on a 30-inch high definition monitor. You might be doing this on a laptop, and that's perfectly okay. The problem is if you do it on a laptop and I load your file up on my big screen TV that I grade this on, it looks very different. And I want to grade you off of what you saw, not what I see when I load it on my screen. So that's why I have you do that. Okay. So again, when you submit homework assignments, and this is listed in the assignment, but you need to give me the .twbx file. You need to give me the PNG file, the exported image that I just showed you. And you also need to give me your data set because I'm going to let you pick your data sets. Okay. So that should be enough to get you started. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know, and I look forward to seeing your work. Thanks, everybody.